Welcome everyone to our next session, represented by Manoj Chopkar. Today we have Manoj Chopkar, who is presenting on topic site performs with static site generation in Sitecore Headless. He has more than 5 years of experience in this industry, and we hope that we have a good session today. Fruitful one. So Manoj Chopkar, over to you.
Right, let me share my screen.
Yeah, it's already shared.
Yeah, can you see my screen? Hopefully, yes.
Yes.
All right, so let us begin this introduction by giving us some insights about me. So, a quick introduction about me. So, I'm working as a senior software engineer with Aspire Infolabs, and I'm XM Cloud and Sitecore 10 certified professional. I have expertise working on Sitecore Headless and XM Cloud projects, along with different Sitecore versions. So, yeah. Okay, let's have a walkthrough of agenda of what we'll be looking in this session. So first we'll be having some introduction about what is Sitecore Forms and why do we use it. So I hope everyone is aware of it, but still we'll have a quick introduction about it. Next we'll have a introduction about Sitecore Next.js app rendering options, SSR versus SSG. Although there are various app rendering options available with Next.js, but we'll be having a comparative analysis with SSR and SSG. I'll be explaining you why SSR and SSG in the further session, in this session. Then we'll have an overview of Sitecore Forms option with headless solutions. What all options are available in Sitecore Forms in headless solution for Sitecore Forms. So basically, just to give a quick insight about it, there are three ways you can have it. So one is using npm form package, second is using embeddable form frameworks, and third is having like implementing third-party forms, example Sitecore Send, Salesforce Forms, and etc. Next, we'll have a deep analysis or deep dive in Sitecore embeddable forms. We'll see the Next.js implementation, the common known errors for it, and why to use Sitecore embeddable forms there. Last, we'll have an introduction about Sitecore Forms, XM Cloud Forms option, when to use and when not to, and conclusions. All right, let's begin this session with a quick introduction. So what is Sitecore Forms? So as I think all you must be aware of, like what is Sitecore Forms. So Sitecore Forms is a tool that basically helps you create a form without the assistance of developer. So even a content author or a marketing person can create a Sitecore Forms without the assistance of a developer itself. So where is it located? So it is already located inside the Sitecore Launchpad. You'll have an option for Sitecore Forms. So what it helps? It helps to create a forms, custom forms, collect data, analyze performance, and help business grow. So all right. So let's see a comparative analysis now. A comparative analysis between SSG and SSR. Now, before we begin with this topic with SSG and SSR, just a quick intro, like quick background why we are seeing SSG and SSR. Because in Sitecore Headless solution, we do an option to render a page using SSG, SSR, ISR. But although we are familiar using with SSG and SSR, most of the cases we use SSG and SSR. Although Sitecore Forms works with these cases, SSG and SSR as well. So how we can utilize the Sitecore Forms based on this, we'll see this, and what is the need of using SSG when you can use SSR also to implement the Sitecore Forms. We'll have all these deep dive further. So before that, we'll have this comparative analysis, SSG and SSR. So what is SSG? SSG is static site generation and SSR is server side rendering. So what happens in SSG is it generates the static HTML pages at the build time itself, and compared to that in SSR, the page renders on the server response to the user request. So whenever a user hits the request, so server brings back the data and like shows on the page. So the second parameter will be comparing is on the rebuild time. So whenever you So this build process, so the generation of the pages occurs during the build process only. The entire site is built during the build process only, and compared to this occurs on each request, leading to the dynamic content. So whenever a request is hit, so you'll have the dynamic content data or the updated data on it. So use case, when should we use SSG application, when should we use SSR application? Ideally it is suitable for SSG application is suitable for large static site, large sites where there are no dynamic contents or very little dynamic content. And in case of SSR, like it is suitable for web application that requires real-time updates. So do consider this point while when using an SSG or SSR application. So user request, so whenever, so as already mentioned, like server response, like whenever a user hits a page, so in SSG the pages are built during the build time itself, so server respond to the pre-built pages only. And compared to SSR, server process the request with that generates the HTML dynamically. Because like we see, like we understand, like whenever a user hits the request on the page, so server brings the data and then helps to populate it on the page. So content updates, so whenever you'll have to you need to update the content on a particular site, you'll have to rebuild the entire site for updating the content. And compared to SSR, it doesn't require the entire site rebuilding, because again the server hits a particular page, brings back the updated content. So that's the reason we don't need entire site building. So load time, uh, generally the SSG application has the load time, like higher load time. Generally it loads fast because it doesn't involve, like there is no intervention of server to bring the data, and the pages are already available, so that those are already pre-built. So that's the case, that's the reason we'll have a, you'll usually see the load time of a page, load time of an SSG application higher, like it loads quickly compared to SSR application. Because because in SSR application it involves a server request, server needs to bring the data, and then further process goes on to populate it. So there are many other parameters in which we can compare this, out of which we'll have, like I took the few basic parameters which will be required using like for understanding why and when. So now we have seen the comparative analysis of SSG and SSR. Let's see the advantages of using SSG, because in this session we'll be talking about SSG application, like how we can utilize Sitecore Forms with SSG. So therefore, let's understand why SSG before going further. So advantages of SSG: improved performance. So improved performance in the sense is like whenever a whenever a SSG application is built, so the pages are already available during the build time itself, like they are built during the build time. So thereby it improves the performance. Like we have seen, the load time is faster compared to SSR application. So it helps to improve the performance of the particular site. Then SEO, what is the like why SEO, like how it helps to like improve the SEO. Since like you must be aware now, like for SSG application the pages are built during the build time itself, so thereby the content is available for the search crawler bots to crawl the website easily. Therefore it helps to improve the SEO as well. Reduce cost is one of the important parameter where you can think of having an SSG application over SSR application. So let's understand the condition, like let's understand it with a scenario, like where you are let's suppose you are using one of front end hosting. So if you're using a Vercel comes with some plans. So if you're using one of the plan where your site is way bigger, so what happens in Vercel is whenever you accept the particular plan resources, so basically whenever you accept the particular plan resources, it will charge you dynamically. You won't know like how it is getting charged. So the main concept of having an SSG application is reducing cost. Like it helps to reduce the cost way much better. So with the help of SSG application, you can reduce the cost, because whenever pages are built, again they are built during the build time, so there is no interference of server. In that case, the server will in that case, if you're using Versal or any other Netlify or somewhere else, it will require a less server time, less servers to like bring the data, and it will utilize less resources. So thereby it will help you to reduce the cost as well. So scalability. So scalability is also one of the major parameter. So because serving the static files are easier and more cost effective, allowing the static sites to handle large amount of traffic with the minimum infrastructure. Like we have seen, like already talked about having a minimum infrastructure, where in case like utilizing the wherein which SSG application helps you to reduce the utilizing the less amount of resources, thereby making it highly scalable. Right. So there are many other advantages, but yeah, these are the few of them. So let's begin with let's understand now the browser Sitecore flow when using the Sitecore Forms in headless application. So now we are talking about Sitecore Forms. So let's first understand how the data flows between the browser and Sitecore whenever a form is loaded on a page on a particular browser. So uh, so whenever a browser gets a request, so whenever a particular page with the form is hit, so from browser, the browser get the layout service data from Sitecore. So again, just to let you know, Sitecore providers data in headless application. Sitecore providers way to get data from the headless application. There are layout service to get data. So there are two layout service available. One is the REST layout service, and second is graphical layout service. The two ways you can get data. So browser gets the layout service data from the Sitecore. Sitecore in returns the layout data plus the form data schema. You can see over here. So and then once the layout data and the form schema data is available, the JS renders the form schema to HTML, and that way the forms get populated. So again, then user fills out the form and the post form data. Once the data is post, it will execute. Sitecore will execute the submit actions or save form for the next step, and again it will return back the submit result plus next step schema if there are multiple steps in it. Again, once the data is returned from Sitecore, it will again the JS will render the form again, and the same process will go on. So that way a data flows between a browser and a Sitecore in a headless application.
Yeah. Manoj, sorry for interrupting. Are you
Yeah.
sharing any other screen on your side?
No, you can't see.
Yes. Yeah, we can
You
see
can't
the
see a diagram.
PPT. Yeah, I can't see the diagram. Is it only on my side or
No,
anyone?
no. We are also not having.
Okay.
All
Can you
right,
just yeah,
just a
can you
second. Let
please share
me
that screen?
share my screen. This time I'll share my entire screen. Give me a minute. Just
Correct.
let me keep on DND mode first, so that we don't have any disturbance. All right. Hope you can see my screen now.
Yes, Manoj. Now we can see. Thank you.
All right. So based on this diagram, if you can see, so this was the diagram which I was trying to explain you, data flow between a browser and a Sitecore. So hope this is clear. So just an overview of this diagram. So basically, what happens the site whenever browser gets the request. So whenever page is hit on the browser. Yeah.
I have a quick question. So where is the front-end application? You have just simply hitting from the browser to the site core, and where is your where the front-end
So
application?
you
Sorry
won't.
to sorry to interrupt. Let's do the question answer session at the end, please. Then it will be helpful, I believe. Please put your question in the message box. We can discuss the question answer session at the end. I hope you don't mind, Chandan.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Chandan, I'll get back to you on that part. So let us proceed with the further in the session. So let's see the first way of implementing a Sitecore Forms using an NPM form package. So I already had a session on NPM form package way. And so I won't be going much deep inside it, but just a quick overview of this. I'll have a quick overview of this, how you can implement a Sitecore, like how you can implement use Sitecore forms inside your headless application using the npm form package way. So npm form package is like npm install stand for node package manager. That means you'll have to install some packages, the node packages from npm. So there are two packages you'll have to install. So one is react forms and second is jss form package. So uh, so that's the two package you'll have to install while using the npm form package when you are trying to implement a Sitecore form using the npm form package way. So let's understand the point to like when to consider like npm form package way while implementing Sitecore forms. So npm form package way works only with ssr, and it works with the REST layout service. These two are the mandatory requirement whenever you are using the Sitecore forms using the npm form package way. So there is another name for this is npm form package. Npm package way is like JSS forms. So why I named is npm package way? Because at the end you'll have to install the two packages to implement the Sitecore forms. So this is one. So let's understand the common known error. So this is the common issue when you're trying to implement a Sitecore forms. So this is the anti-forgery token cookie token issue. So this usually comes up when your application is ssg and you're using REST layout service. So either you are not meeting any of the prerequisites of it, that is when you're trying to use jss forms or npm form way, you must have your application for your application must be ssr, and you must be using the REST layout service. So already like discussed, like there are two ways of getting data, the REST layout service and the GraphQL layout service. So that in case you'll have to use the REST layout service whenever you're trying to implement the forms. Now we have seen that for implementing Sitecore forms using the npm package way, you must be using, your application must be ssr and you must be using a REST layout service. So what if there is a requirement where in which case you must have your application to use ssg and your layout service must can be REST layout or GraphQL layout service? What in that case can you utilize Sitecore forms in that? So the answer is yes, you can utilize Sitecore forms using ssg application as well. But how? We'll see this now. So here comes the Sitecore embeddable forms framework. So Sitecore embeddable, so we'll have a deep understanding of Sitecore embeddable forms framework. What is Sitecore embeddable forms and what is it, how we can use it? So what is embeddable forms framework? So embeddable forms frameworks lets you display the Sitecore forms on any other web page. So it helps to display forms that are even not working on Sitecore application as well. So with what does this Sitecore embeddable forms use, like form framework use? It uses a lit library. Lit itself is a library. It is a JavaScript template library that helps to create a JavaScript literals, tag literals, so or tag functions. So just in a layman terms, I'll say it like you can create your own tags using this library. That is it. Just if you have to understand what is lit library. What this library, it also utilizes Tailwind CSS. Again, Tailwind CSS, it's a CSS framework and that is highly reusable, that uses highly reusable classes. It is same as Bootstrap but some optimized features in it. So it uses Tailwind CSS. Embeddable form frameworks also supports accessibility, and it also supports narration tools such as screen readers. Also, just a point to remember, whenever you're trying to implement a Sitecore embeddable forms, it doesn't affect any of the functionality or styles on the web pages. So this is all about what is embeddable forms, what it uses, how it is, like what are all the features of it. And so let's begin, like what are the prerequisites whenever you're trying to use a Sitecore embeddable forms inside your headless applications. So the first prerequisite is like you must be using Sitecore 10.3 or 0 or later versions. And second is your Sitecore headless service should be 21.0.0 or above. Okay. These two are the prerequisites whenever you're trying to implement a Sitecore forms. When you're trying to implement Sitecore forms using the Sitecore embeddable form framework. So let's see how we can implement forms using Sitecore embeddable form framework. So for that you'll have to download the Sitecore embeddable form framework from the Sitecore website. So Sitecore, so you'll have to go to the download portal and download the Sitecore embeddable forms. So once you download the particular package format, you'll have a zip file, in which when you extract it, you'll see two different things. One is the Sitecore-embeddable forms.umd.js file, and second is a CSS folder in it. So you'll have to copy this JS file and the CSS folder in your web application directory. Being said that, like if your application is in C init www, you'll have to paste it there itself directly. Remember, like whenever you try to implement Sitecore embeddable forms, do not try to change the file name or the CSS folder name or even the CSS file name. There in case you'll face issues. So do not try to change those things. Then after, just copy and paste, like whenever when you copy and paste these two files, the CSS folder and the Sitecore embeddable forms JS file, you can use embeddable forms framework. Again, just just a step to remember, you'll see a JS file without any folder and a CSS file within a folder. So just try to keep it as it is. So there is a CSS inside the CSS folder, you'll see a CSS file. So just copy and paste the CSS folder there and the JS file there itself. So then you can use it on web page. So on the web page where you want to display the forms, a script tag that refers to the EFF script. So you have to use a script tag that refers to the embeddable form script. We'll see the implementation in the next step, but just overview of it. So how you can like render a form using an embeddable form way. So already mentioned, like embeddable forms uses a lit library. So just an overview I told you, like you can create your own text. So we do have a tag to render a form, that is SCEF-form tag, to specify the Sitecore form item in it, and we need to specify the Sitecore form item in it. So we'll see an implementation of this. Let me go further. Okay, this is the basic HTML implementation of an form, Sitecore form, using an embeddable form framework. Okay, so now in this, if you can see, there is a tag being used, SCEF-form, wherein which we are passing the form ID here. So this comes from the lit library. So this is what we discussed. You'll have to use this SCEF form tag. Additional, we discussed, like we'll have to embed a embeddable form script. So this is the script. This is the script file which you'll have to embed. Sorry, just a second. Yeah. This is the script file which you'll have to will have to use it inside your HTML file or a particular JSON rendering, or wherever you create your particular uh, rendering, or where you are trying to show the particular forms in it. So this way you can show a particular one form, but let's suppose there are 100 of forms in your site, and then how can you reuse this particular block of code, since like being like said that we'll have to pass the form ID inside a particular SCF form tag. So in order to do that, you can create a headless component. Headless component being said that you'll have to create a JSON rendering in it. So the same way we create a rendering in Sitecore Headless. So the way is like you create a JSON rendering in it. So whenever you're trying to use forms in your headless application, remember, whenever you create a JSON rendering, you must select the layout service. Sorry, the context resolver. You must select the context resolver, form context resolver in it. So even when you are using SSR or SSG application, you'll have to use the context resolver, Sitecore Forms context resolver in it. So create a JSON rendering. Let's suppose I named it form, and I'll select the context for it. So I'll select the form context resolver in it. So once you select this, in the props you'll see like what I have done this here is I tried to get the particular form item ID so that I can make my component highly reusable in it. So I tried to get the form ID using these props. I'll have it inside prop rendering fields dot form item ID. I get the form item ID, and just I created a Sitecore headless component where I can highly reuse it. So whenever I just add a particular whenever I try to embed a forms, so whenever I'm trying to add a form in it, I'll just insert the rendering, select the form data source, and it will pick the particular form ID inside it. So that way you can create a component in your headless application and utilize it. So let's understand the points or like points to consider when you're using the embeddable form framework. So like we had a prerequisite, like whenever you're trying to use embeddable form framework, your Sitecore application must be 10.3 or later. Second, like your headless service must be 21.0.0 or later. And just an additional check, like it doesn't support XGB exclusive features like trigger goal summit action, summit action, performance tracking, robot detections, etc. So the common known errors while implementing a Sitecore like forms using Sitecore embeddable forms framework way. So if you can see on my screen, there is a blue line over here. So this is an, and on the right hand side, if you can see, there is a loader. So these are two different issues which are on the screen. So let's talk about the left hand side, where you can see the type error failed to fetch the connection failed to connect something, and I have highlighted the cause for it as well. So what will happen, like whenever you try to submit a particular form with custom submit action, so there is, let's suppose there is a requirement wherein which you'll have to create a custom submit actions, and you are using this way of using Sitecore embeddable form framework. So then in that case you won't be able to submit the form. So why you won't be able to submit the form is like whenever a form is being filled, and whenever you hit the particular submit button, uh, it is required that I see item ID should get passed. So this item ID is getting passed as a null whenever you will try to use this using the script way. You'll see that the item ID is getting passed as 000, that is null. So once you pass the item ID over here, form item ID over here, you'll be able to submit this form. So to overcome this issue, you'll have to add an additional some modifications in your script file. Script file is the Sitecore-embeddable forms.umd.js file. Then in that file you'll have to add additional some logic so that it can get the item ID, and then your forms can get successfully submitted. For that, we already created a service ticket for Sitecore, and Sitecore has like accepted it as a feature request, and so it will probably this issue might not come whenever you're trying to use the updated version of these embeddable forms, but as of now you'll face this issue. So but in additionally, if you need the updated script for it, so I can share you the script. Just ping me on LinkedIn. So I'll share you the updated script for this, where in which we have like updated the logic for it so that we can get the item ID of the form, and then we can submit the form successfully. The second error which you are saying is the loader issue. These loader issues come up when, like I already mentioned, like do not try to change the class folder name, file name, any of the file name. So if you try to change any of the file name or folder name, it will like you'll land up in this loader issue. We have tried many of the ways, like, but you'll still encounter this issue if you change the file name in it. Additionally, for your front-end application, let's suppose if you're using Next.js for localhost 3000, just copy and paste these files inside the public folder, the CSS folder, and the file, the JS file. And these are the common errors which you will face while implementing the Sitecore embeddable forms. So let's talk about third-party integrations of forms. Like what are third-party integrations of forms? Like third-party integration of forms is like this basically comes up while adding a script inside your Next.js application. So let's suppose there are many third-party forms available. One is Sitecore and this is Spider Forms from Salesforce, Bravo, many other marketing tools which provides forms. So you can utilize that, but those comes up using them like adding a JavaScript, some script inside your headless application. Even though based on the particular need, you can like make it dynamic. That's totally depend on your requirement. But I'll have an example of a Sitecore send form getting implemented in your headless application. So this is like already mentioned, whenever you try to implement third-party forms, it comes up with the injecting the script. So this is the demo script, a reference script for a Sitecore form, the Sitecore send forms. So in this case, like it will show up the particular one of the form, wherein which the blurred way is like wherein which you can pass, like there is your form ID and all. So this way you can have your third-party forms integrated inside your headless application. Now the particular thing which we have seen till now, the SSR, SSG, Sitecore Forms, these are all like the embeddable form framework way. This is totally applicable for Sitecore headless application only. Sitecore headless application, not for XM cloud applications. So if you have to use the Sitecore XM, if you have to use the Sitecore form, if you have to use the forms in Sitecore XM cloud, there is a forms option available in Sitecore Forms. You'll have to use it. Again, it makes use of Sitecore send forms in XM cloud application. If you see some CA classes or some, you'll see the Sitecore send forms being used there. So of the framework of the Sitecore send form being used. So the Sitecore embeddable form way, the Sitecore headless npm package way is not applicable for Sitecore XM cloud forms option. So there is another way to implement a Sitecore form, Sitecore XM cloud forms when you're using the XM cloud application. So yeah, that brings to the end of this session. So if you have any questions now, I can take that up.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Rohan.
Manoj,
Chandan,
in such a good
Chandan, please
information.
go ahead
Yep.
with your question.
Right. Finding request is going from project to the Sitecore instance, right? But that is not the actual case, right? When we request, it goes to the Next.js and then it goes to the Sitecore instance, right? So a bit confusion there.
Okay, so if you like I already mentioned, like you get data for using the layout service, and when you're using your headless application, you remember there is a file scjs.config.json file, wherein which you provide a layout service host. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So whenever a browser, whenever you hit a request from your front end application, the data is being get from the layout service. How the data is getting loaded is from the layout service gets connected with your front end application, and then in that case you get the data.
Okay.
So even though if you're loading your front end application on Vercel, Sitecore helps you to bring the data using the layout service host.
Yeah.
So you can check, like you can even get your UAT or production data in your local as well, if you correctly point that particular layout, like if you correctly point to the layout service host. So that's the benefit.
And secondly, the embedded form you're saying. So without this, we cannot render the form in the Next.js application in the headless approach.
You can render it, like I already mentioned, like what are the particular prerequisites of using an Sitecore Forms in the headless application. That is, if you want to use a Sitecore Forms in the headless application, the first way is your application must be SSR only, and you must be using REST layout service. These are the two prerequisites of using that Sitecore Forms. But
and the JSS SDK we need to install in the Next.js application, right?
yes, I mentioned, yeah, two.
And let's see if I just want to let's see if I have a situation I don't want to use the JSS SDK and just want to call the layout service and have the data. Can we integrate those data into the UI in the Next.js application without the JSS SDK?
No. How can you use Sitecore Forms then?
No, I mean, so we can call the layout service from any application, right? Any front-end application.
You can call layout service, but how can you get the Sitecore Form data whenever, like if you get the, how can you get data for it?
Yeah,
Because I already mentioned, when you're trying to get the Sitecore Form data, you'll have to use the form context resolver there in it. So
that you have to set in the component level, right? So,
yes.
yes. So I am saying about the layout service. Suppose we are giving a request to the home page, and the layout service will return all the data of that home page, all the presentation data, everything in the JSON format, right?
Yes.
So
but how will you render the form? How will you render the form then? How will you render whole HTML? So like just an insight, whenever you try to create some custom implementation in the headless application, you'll notice like you can create like whatever you are doing that is restricted till Sitecore only, but you won't be able to see your custom fields or new fields in the your front end, that is in a headless front end application where like let's suppose localhost or something or a browser. For that purpose you'll have to, again like I already mentioned, like there is a JS that comes into picture that brings the schema. Layout service brings the schema, and then JS helps to render that schema onto the page. So then only you can use the Sitecore forms. Even though if you get data from layout services, that is not of use, because you'll have the form data schema in it. So then the JS will have to write some JS to render that schema so that your Sitecore forms can be loaded.
So you mean to say the embedded form JS5 that helps to manage the custom fields that is present in the form, that you want to say?
No, don't get confused on custom field. I just answered to your question for the layout service. You asked a question like, even though if you get the data from the layout service, then we can use Sitecore forms or not. So answer is no, you can't directly use. You'll have to add some JS to it to render the Sitecore forms onto your web page. Okay. And for using custom implementation, let's suppose you have some custom field, there is a requirement wherein which you'll have to add a custom field in it. So in the both cases, you'll have to add some logic in it to get the render, to get the particular custom field render on the page. You can check out the documentation for embeddable forms. Therein there is a way, like they are shown an example how to get the custom field, how they render the custom field. Again that, then again you can make it dynamic all together. That depends on your business logic only. So but there is a way you can render a custom field in the Sitecore forms.
My last question, so when you submit the forms, so how it goes back to the Sitecore part? So because the layout service just is the gate operation, right?
Let me share my screen and show you the browser, the flow, how the data is getting shared. Hope you can see my screen.
Mm.
Not yet, Manoj.
Okay, let me know if you can see it. Okay, I didn't share it, sorry.
Yes, we can see.
So if you see, the whenever you try to submit a form, post form data to Sitecore, it execute these actions and then again it returns the data, right? Like try to understand this diagram totally. This is all like how the data will flow in Sitecore. This is like just to have a basic understanding of it, like how the data is being flowed. This won't be like like getting utilized anywhere. Like you'll have just an idea like how the data is getting flow between the browser and Sitecore using layout service.
No, my concern is like the web application front end is in the Next.js, right? So the
Right.
on the front end, the form is getting loaded. Now, when we are
uh,
submitting that form, so how that
uh,
is by layout service we are getting the data. And my
right.
point is when we are submitting it, so which API it's using to push the data back?
Great. Let me show you that as well. There is a form API.
Mhm.
I think it is not like there is a form service API that is being used to get like to this handle all these things. Okay, and probably form
And that is
builder. I
part,
can't.
and that is the part of JS's SDK, right? The front end SDK for the
Yes, headless SDK.
okay for
That is
Next.js,
part of
right?
headless. Yeah.
So finally, without using SDK, JSS SDK for the front end, we cannot handle anything, right? Means we need to install
No,
that, right?
no. Yes. Without like using like if you're trying to use the npm form way, then you'll have to install it. If you go with the embeddable form way, there is no need to install any packages and all. You can have it directly. Sorry. Hope I cleared your all the
Yeah, yeah.
questions.
Manoj, but that's already been answered. That was regarding the custom fields in the forms. So you have
Mhm.
already answered that.
Yes.
Any more questions from anyone? Okay, we'll take it as no. Thank you guys. Thanks everyone. Thank you, Manoj, for
Thank
giving
you.
up your time.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining.